Our mission is dynamic education centered in Christ. And that is our first principle as a school, not principle like me, but principle as in what is important to us. The most important thing for us, our starting point as a school and our philosophy is providing dynamic education centered in Christ. So I tell our staff every year at the beginning of the school year, when we come together as a whole faculty and staff, in case you didn't know, we have about 60 faculty and staff here at St. Thomas. So the whole organization, everyone who works here from an hour to full time, comes together, and I remind them that everything they are doing in this school, whether they work in maintenance, the cafeteria, the classroom, educational support, administration, everything we do needs to tie back to the mission, needs to be connected to our mission of dynamic education centered in Christ. So how is what you are doing providing dynamic education centered in Christ for students? And the reason this is so important is because as a school, we are pulled in so many different directions. We are asked to prioritize so many different things by so many different stakeholders. And what I want all of my staff to be able to zero in on is that dynamic education centered in Christ for children takes precedence over all of this distraction. And when we cut out those distractions, we're able to achieve our mission. We're able to accomplish those things, and we don't get bogged down by all of the other things that can happen. You may have heard me say this before if you've come to stay at the school or you've been to kindergarten kickoff or kindergarten roundup, but I was very moved at a conference I went to my first year as principal, where the speaker said every school has the temptation to become adult-led or adult prioritized, right? In other words, that every school, there's a temptation to always to do what's best for staff first, to do what's best for the school board, to do what's best for parents. When every school, what their mission is to do what's best for students first. And so that's why we have this as our number one focus, is doing what's best for students first, providing them with a dynamic education centered in Christ. Everything else happens. But if you know that analogy of that example of taking a jar and you put your big boulders in first and then the smaller ones and the smaller ones and the sand and then the water, if you're familiar with that one, our boulders, our big rocks, are providing dynamic education centered in Christ. Here's an organizational chart for us, and I'm